Today on Locked On Rockies, in order to win baseball games, you have to score runs. And what's something the Colorado Rockies struggle with doing, I should say? Scoring runs.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 8th day of May in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You are right in the right spot. That is your spot. That's what we do. We talk Rockies baseball each and every day right here on the Locked On Rockies podcast and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can find us and all of the Locked On Rockies content on your favorite streaming services, bringing you all sorts of good Rockies talk. As we are chatting about the first game of the Giants series today. The biggest issue with the Rockies is they continue to be bad at offense. It doesn't, home, away, doesn't really matter. This team is going to be shut out more this year than it was last year, in a year which they set a franchise record for losses. And as they continue to just go down the path of setting the wrong type of history again, I'll save that. I'll dive into it a little bit to rebuild, tough losses type of stuff going in here as well on today's episode. Before we dive into everything today, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. So, it's supposed to be in a rebuild. If we're fully buying into it, they have said. It seems that is what we are to believe for the Rockies, is that it's a rebuild and it's tough and all that jazz. But the fact of the matter is, it's one thing to be the rebuild, but it's another thing to be like it's one thing to be historically bad. It's one thing to be a team that even if this is the rebuild, I'm not overly excited about the potential, because if you're really truly going to fully buy into this rebuild thing, stop playing Jacob Stallings and Elias Diaz in the same game. It shouldn't. I know Elias Diaz has been one of the better offensive threats, but if you're looking to spark some offense up, it doesn't make sense that Hunter Goodman continues to sit on the bench. Doesn't do Hunter Goodman any good to sit on the bench. And I'm sorry, we really don't need Jacob Stallings and Elias Diaz in the same game. It doesn't make any sense. It's the Rockies continuing to shoehorn in their veterans here and take a spot away from a guy that they don't need to be doing it in a season where they don't need to be following that type of stuff. This season is so far gone already. The priority should be getting the young guys as many at-bats as possible. It should already be at this stage. There should be no it doesn't matter what type of if you're trying to build the momentum back up or snap the skid or whatever. If there's lineups this year that are going to include, and I know last night wasn't this, so I understand that Charlie Blackmon was not in the lineup last night, but if the Rockies' plan in the month of May is to go and trot out lineups with Stallings, Diaz, and Blackmon in them, that's a problem. At this stage, it is not too early to start just playing the full outfield of the young guys. These guys need to go through the learning pains. Corbin Carroll is struggling this year, but he's still being put at the front of the lineup for the Diamondbacks and being told to figure it out. That's what needs to happen for some of these young guys, because what's the difference? You're going to put Diaz and Stallings in the game, and the Rockies are still going to be shut out and lose by 5. It doesn't make any sense. Again, you continue these question mark decisions by the Rockies, and you're like, what's the point? What is the point of Hunter Goodman being up with the Rockies right now? If he's not going to play, what's the point? If you really truly think the best thing for this offense is to unlock its full potential with Stallings and Diaz in the lineup, it ain't working. Goodman needs more at-bats. Plain and simple. There's no excuse for it in this situation. You might as well play the young guys because it doesn't matter what you're doing. You still can't score. And I know Elias Diaz has been as strong off, and I know Jacob Stallings had a good series, or was effective in Pittsburgh. But it still doesn't make sense that they're taking the DH spot. That Elias Diaz is taking the DH spot. The Rockies have sat there and just been like, well, we had this plan for DH and first base and right field and everything, but we're just going to jumble it up. First, we're going to put Chris Bryant in right field when we said we weren't going to play him in right field because we were worried about his health. Well, he's hurt. Still on the IL 20 days later after Bud Black said it was no big deal. And we'll have Elias Diaz play some more DH instead of, any of these young guys or Charlie Blackmon or any of these other options. I mean, it's you have to put the young guys in for the playing time at the expense of the veterans on this team. It doesn't matter. I mean, as much as you want to honor and send off Charlie Blackmon as much flowers and as much grace as everything. If there's a lineup with those three guys in it, those three veterans, and we see Beck and Goodman on the bench, that doesn't help this whole rebuild thing. It doesn't help the Rockies. If anything, it just makes things more confusing. If you're doing it with the hope that it beefs up their trade value and you make the moves at the deadline, all right, I'll eat my words a little bit. But truly, it does not make any sense to have a lineup with both Stallings and Diaz in it. It would be better to give Hunter Goodman reps at the DH position in that game last night. Because it didn't matter. It didn't change anything for the Rockies when it comes to scoring runs because they can't do that. Because they're a team whose offense continues to be incredibly broken. Strikeout's not the problem so much for the Rockies last night. They did strike out 7 times last night as opposed to their usual double digits, it feels like. But it needs a life. It needs youth. It needs these young guys to get in a groove. I mean, it needs somebody to get into a groove. It needs somebody on offense to go up there and be aggressive and be a threat. Even with this good season from Ryan McMahon and Brendan Rodgers heating up maybe a little bit here. Who on the Rockies offense is going up there and instilling fear or any type of doubt in terms of the pitch against whatever pitcher they face? I mean, it's a total the lack of confidence from the Rockies is insane. I mean, you can tell in the swings. You can tell when a team, even when they're struggling, is still confident. So look at the Marlins series. They got guys that were still down in that game, and they were coming up dancing to the plate because they knew and felt confident against who they were going up against. The Rockies look like they've walked out of a morgue every single game. There's no energy. We've talked about this before. There's no energy. There's no pulse. There's no anger. It seems like either, at least reflected on it. And then mixed in with the fact that this team isn't preparing its team well enough. The preparation, the analysis, the look ahead, and the scheming isn't working for this team. 5-0 shutout loss at home. I want to get some stats on that shutout loss here. Here we go. Patrick Lyons on Twitter. Tuesday's 5-0 loss to the Giants is the 6th time the Rockies have been shut out this season. Colorado has suffered a shutout with 3 or less hits 4 times in 2024 history. That's tied for 3rd most in franchise history. There are 127 games left in this season. Should also be noted that the Rockies have been shut out with 4 hits or less at home twice this season. That already ties a franchise record for most in a season, with 1994, 2012, 2014, and 2017. I mean, again, it's another example of the Rockies setting the wrong type of history. And I can't just sit here and say all under the guise of the rebuild because it shouldn't be this bad. Unless and if it is this bad during the beginning of this rebuild, I am really not confident in the Rockies' ability to get these players to where they need to get. If this is the start of the rebuild, if this is truly what the Rockies envision a rebuild is to be, which there are signs that it is. We have heard that it is a rebuild. We've seen signs. If this is how it is, and I know rebuilding baseball is tough, but again, we're talking about worst in franchise history, worst in baseball history. We're talking about worst ever. Other rebuilding teams didn't do this. Other rebuilding teams weren't this bad. That's the red flag of how much of this development is actually paying off for these players. How much of the Rockies' approach, which is fully believed in by the ownership of this team, is actually successful in developing these players. Are we really truly to believe that the Rockies are going to be able to develop their next crop of players into being a star team? We'll have to see. But I don't see right now. It's hard to see things panning out like it did with Arenado, Story, and LeMahieu, mixed with that pitching rotation in Charlie Blackmon, like it did with the playoffs with this current mix of guys. Because there's a lot of guys that my doubts continue to grow with, and my doubts with of the organization's abilities to get the most out of those guys and to develop these guys, it continues to shrink. Because at this point, I really have a complete lack of faith in the approach of the Colorado Rockies organization, because this team looks outmatched every single time they step out on the field. And it really truly feels like their wins come from when they just get lucky. I know their offense comes alive and they score big in the wins that their limited wins that they do have this year. But even with the rebuild moniker and the rebuild label, it is still hard for me to feel confident when this team looks completely outmatched every single time they step on the field. I mean, there's 127 games left, and they've almost been shut out the same amount of times they got shut out in their franchise's worst season of all time. That's a red flag, especially here at home. There is no Coors Field dominance right now. Coors Field's a better place to play for other people. And I want to read an article that you gotta go if you want to learn more about, I mean, the small stuff, the inner workings of baseball. This piece from Skylar Timmons over on Purple Row really highlights how deep you have to look into some of this stuff with the Rockies and how frustrating a game baseball can be if you're playing it. Because, like I always say when we're going through here, I know those guys are better baseball players than I. And they're better baseball players than what they're playing. I do like and believe in the talent on this team. It's the people helping this talent get the most out of their abilities and get the most out of their prep that I doubt. All right, we're long overdue for a break. So let's take a break, and then I'm going to go into this piece from Skylar Timmons here talking about the Rockies' foul ball problem coming up here in segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and it is the prime time reminder for you, folks. It is this weekend. You cannot forget Mother's Day. Yes, Mother's Day this weekend. Do not forget. You want to make mom smile. So start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. If she's a bookworm, try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Give her a gift card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15+ on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. Yes, that's right. Get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15+ on your next flower, grocery, convenience, or retail order with code LOCKEDONMLB on DoorDash. Use the DoorDash app today. Order using DoorDash. Terms do apply. That's code LOCKEDONMLB. We're also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily Fantasy Sports app. They got you covered if you want to get in on all the action during the playoffs and throughout baseball's regular season and postseason, of course. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more players' stats and watch the winnings roll in. I don't know, Rockies, you could take less hits. You could take less runs. You could take the Giants to score, players to score, hit more or strike out less. I don't know what you want to bet on the Nuggets there, what they're going to do in terms of their more or less stats. But if you are a daily fantasy sports expert, PrizePicks has you covered because you are going to be able to compete with some of the best in the business at big time prizes during this playoff season, including 100 times your money up on PrizePicks. You just got to go check out the app, the PrizePicks app that you can download today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match up to $100 on the PrizePicks app when you use the code LOCKEDONMLB. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot. That's what we're doing around here. We're talking Rockies baseball. Hey, you can find Rockies baseball all season long on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. If you want to get your Rockies Giants play-by-play action, just check it out and on SiriusXM or the SiriusXM app. Also on the Locked On Sports Network here, you can check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay. So one of the things that's frustrating about this Rockies offense is they foul the ball off a lot. It looks like they are not squaring things up and they're missing out on opportunities. So what does the great Skylar Timmons do? Well, he goes in and he does an in-depth dive into the problem that foul balls are for the Rockies. And I'm just going to read parts of this because you got to go see the graphs. You got to go read the different breakdowns, but it does give some insight into when the Rockies are missing some pitches. I think the visual component on this piece really does help, where you see the pitches the Rockies are fouling off, especially fastballs, and you're wondering, man, oh man, what happened there? Same with some of the off-speed stuff as well. So really, really recommend Purple Row here, where we're reading from. Foul balls are a real problem for the Rockies offense. Skylar Timmons writes this. Regarding total foul balls, the Rockies ranked 4th leading into the series against the San Francisco Giants with 973 foul balls. They trail behind such teams as the Los Angeles Dodgers, San Diego Padres, and Chicago Cubs, who represent the top 3. So everybody hits foul balls, no big deal. But sorting by pitch percentage reveals that the Rockies' foul balls equate to 19.6% of all pitches seen as a team. That percentage ranks as the highest in all of baseball, just ahead of the Cleveland Guardians, who have fouled off 19.2% of pitches. These numbers don't tell us much on the surface, but a high percentage of foul balls doesn't necessarily mean the team isn't doing well. Skylar adds, which in parentheses, we know the Rockies aren't. It needs a deeper look. So he goes and he looks at pitches in the zone here. He talks about there's different types of foul balls he's looking at, including foul balls in the zone and foul balls on the fastball and the off-speed stuff. Entering the Giants series, the Rockies had seen the 6th fewest balls in the zone with 2,442 pitches, or 49.1% of pitches seen. It's what the Rockies are doing with these pitches in the zone that are contributing to a lackluster offense. Of the 2,442 pitches the Rockies have seen in the zone, they have fouled off 719 of them, or 29.4%, the second highest rate in baseball behind the Atlanta Braves. Considering the Rockies have fouled off so many pitches, the inability to compete in the zone is a troubling development. It gets even worse when you realize the Rockies have fouled off 132 pitches that are middle over the plate, the 6th highest mark in baseball, but tied for the 2nd highest percentage of 2.7. So it's the percentage that you really got to focus on here with these foul balls. When the Rockies might not, they're at the top in some of these things, but when the percentage is that rate, when you take that number and the percentage of those things are such things as middle misses, like 2.7% of the foul balls that you've missed are middle. That's a problem. That's a huge problem, especially when you're looking at the wasted opportunities and the low slugging and OBA that the Rockies have. It's Skylar puts it perfect. Too many pitches over the plate are being wasted. So we're going here and now into some fastballs from Skylar's work. And so the Rockies have seen 474 fastballs. That does count four seam, the sinker, and cutters. And so here's what Skylar says. Fastballs are the pitches that teams have to be able to compete against, especially in the zone. The Rockies have a league average of a 266 against fastball. That's batting average in the zone, but they have just 42 extra base hits, among the fewest in the league. It's normal to be late against fastballs and foul them off, but the frequency that the Rockies are doing it and not doing damage over the heart of the plate is a huge factor in their offensive shortcomings. So, I mean, that's when you're missing that much. And like I said, you got to see this graph because you are seeing pitches that you could hit over the wall. I mean, obviously, if you could catch up with the speed, but in terms of pitch location, where these pitches are that are just ending up in foul balls, those are wasted opportunities, massive wasted opportunities. So here's some stuff here. The breaking, the basically the summary though from Skylar here on the off speed stuff is, while swinging and missing on those pitches makes sense, the Rockies aren't banging the hangers. They're not punishing pitchers when they're throwing them stuff that weakly goes into the middle of the zone or doesn't break as much. They're not taking full advantage of those opportunities to do damage when there's a missed pitch by the pitcher. They continue to foul them off, time them up incorrectly, and it messes with everything. And it just shows with the Rockies' lack of run scoring that they're not punishing these pitchers when they're throwing mistake pitches. When you see these two pictures here from the Savant, and you see the pitch breakdowns, and you see that these are foul balls, these are pitches the Rockies are missing. You can see why that it is super frustrating, and it clearly is an issue that this team is not timing things up and not being able to punish certain pitches when they have opportunities to do so. They're just fouling them off, which means an issue with timing, an issue with mechanics, or an issue with seeing the ball. And so here's one more thing from Skylar. The Rockies have an 18.8% whiff rate on pitches in the zone, the 8th highest in baseball, while also maintaining the highest chase rate in baseball. Uncompetitive at-bats in the zone followed by a lack of discipline outside of it is just a recipe for disaster. This is why I harp on approach. This is why I harp on philosophy. This is why I harp on coaching. It's because I know that they're really good pitchers. I know that they're elite pitchers. I know that they are playoff caliber pitchers. But these are major league ball players. These are also young major league ball players that need to show that they're able to make this jump. Strikeouts and stuff are going to happen for some of the young guys. That's something I'm okay with. I'm not okay with Ryan McMahon strikeouts. I'm not okay with Brendan Rodgers strikeouts. I'm not okay with Elias Diaz and Jacob Stalling whiffs. I'm not okay with those. I'm not okay with weak offensive numbers from the veterans on this team. You got to perform. You got to come up clutch. And and I'm hopeful that the young guys are going to be able to do that as well. But the Rockies offense, the way with the whiff rate and the inability to punish bad pitches highlights how bad this offense is. This team, and Skylar on his last part there said, how do we fix this? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, basically, because what do we do with the Rockies at this point? It's a matter of trusting this team to get the rebuild done correctly. And with the performances this year, and with the performances in the years following the playoff years, and with the way that they've handled the development and the call-ups of some of these young guys, I'm not confident that the Rockies are going to put their players in the best positions to win. I really do think that the issues with the offense stem deeper and deeper into the organization, just as all of the issues with the Rockies really do. One thing I will say with the Rockies here, and we're going to do this coming up in segment number 3, they did get a little unlucky yesterday, and it was really a classic Giants victory, or how they had the big inning where it was kind of just like, really, that's how it's going to go. That's how it's going to, how the Rockies are going to lose. That's how the Rockies are going to fall behind. We'll talk about that, and we'll look ahead to tonight's matchup coming up in segment number 3. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go is the fun spin on the game you love on the phone that you take everywhere with you. There is so much to talk about Monopoly Go. Let's get started. You can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. You can get cool new playing pieces, my favorite part of Monopoly, to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini game like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services here on the wonderful, wonderful world of the internet. You can also find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Be part of the show. Fire off your Rockies hot takes. We'll hopefully dive into some comments here sooner rather than later. It's going to be a good matchup tonight, I think, for the Rockies here between Peter Lambert and Jordan Hicks. Lambert's got the much higher ERA in terms of that there, but we've seen some good stuff from Peter Lambert and some intriguing stuff as he's been put into this situation where he's got to fill in for Kyle Freeland. I think Lambert still benefits best from being a long relief guy, but Lambert on the bump for the Rockies taking on Jordan Hicks tonight, who has been good this year. Jordan Hicks, 1.89 ERA, the whip of 1.03 in 38 innings. He's struck out 30 with walking 14, only giving up 1 home run here. It's a good pitching staff. We talked with Ben Kaspick yesterday too about how good that pitching staff can be. The Giants in yesterday's game did get a little lucky. I mean, with the way they scored and had those big runs in that big inning, it's really just, that one was just like, gee, golly, when it rains, it pours type of thing. I don't think Dakota Hudson outside of the massive issue with his command and walks. I mean, he was able to at least hang on in there until he gets doinked to death there by a couple of dribblers and some tough plays there that Rymack doesn't have much to do. But those games are going to happen in these type of skids. And until you can prove that you can kind of navigate and respond to those, I mean, it's you can't just sit there and say it's only on bad luck. The Rockies got out hit 10-4 in that game. Another 4-hit shutout at home. Second time that's happened. I mean, again, there's things that you can sit there and say that, yeah, I was unlucky and the Rockies held on ish, but it just continues the feeling of, oh, Rockies trailing again. Rockies, are they going to be able to get anything going? So yesterday's game wasn't frustrating in the fact that, oh man, they're just completely outmatched here in terms of skill level, because the Giants just hit the ball into the grass softly and scored. But it's walks that lead to free opportunities that put runners on, that create emphasis on situations. And it's an offense that continues to just not be good. We need to see something new. I mean, it's just the same old. It's literally just the same old song and dance that we've gone through over and over and over again this year, where it's just Rockies fall behind, Rockies don't do anything to come back. That's the ball game. There's nothing spectacular. There's nothing flashy. There's nothing really fun about watching the Rockies at the moment right now. So hopefully tonight, go after one of their best pitchers, get the job done, because it's going to be tough. We'll see what happens here as the Rockies look to get back on the board somehow against a pitcher that can strike people out. Perfect recipe for the Rockies to once again struggle at home. It's time to start, like we talked about. You got to start showing us something. Got to start showing us some pulse, some life, some fight, some passion, some energy, something. because it is lacking on the field right now. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us here on today's episode and making us your first listen of the day. If you need your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. Or, of course, throughout the playoffs, they got you covered. Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and for all your football coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Buffs, got you covered there. Find us on YouTube, Locked On Rockies. Your subscription really helps the show grow. We'll be breaking down all things Colorado Rockies baseball throughout the week right here on Locked On Rockies. And until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from Locked On Rockies.